Hey guys, happy Friday. This is the end of the week where we were talking about characters. So last week we spent the whole week talking about setting and learning about imagery and tone and all that. And this week we talked more about how to create characters and making sure that those characters are interacting with the setting and that we're creating characters that are realistic and believable and moving and all of those kinds of things. Today I want to talk about some kind of crazy English teachery stuff. It's what we call writing theory, but it's something that if you buy into it can really help your writing, your creative writing, especially if you believe what I'm about to tell you. And if you think I'm just crazy nuts, then you can have that belief as well. But we're going to build on what I've been talking about all week in terms of characters to kind of help you so that when we actually do write the story that we've been working towards, that story's characters are much more kind of interesting and believable and dynamic. So this may help you with that. There will be some notes today, so if you have not yet done so, you should grab yourself whatever whatever you've been using to take notes so that you can use those notes as we move forward. So here's the crazy idea, and I want to kind of caveat this by saying, like, I don't actually believe that the characters are alive. But at the same time, we have to kind of treat the characters as if they are alive. So the crazy theory is that these characters are alive and that they exist. That once you have created the character, that character is not completely under your control because the way that they move, the way that they believe, the way that they interact with people, the way that they feel towards certain things, and the ideas that they have are their own. They aren't yours anymore. And a lot of times when we're beginning writers, which most of you are, we tend to create characters that are very similar to ourselves. So it may be true that the character that you have created is a character that is close to you, or that is a very kind of personalized part of yourself. As you become a more advanced writer of fiction, then you start to be also able to create characters that are their own people and not necessarily aspects of yourself, or are combinations of other people that you know. But a lot of times we start there. However, just because you may have started with a character who is a representation of yourself or of somebody that you're close to doesn't mean that that character is that person anymore. That once the character has been created and you've put them in a place and you've given them their own beliefs and actions and all of that, that they are a person who will do certain things and won't do other things. So you have given them a personality that is now theirs. It may be similar to you, or it may be similar to somebody that you know, but it is not you, and it is not that person that you know. The character is themselves. Their personality comes from their life experiences, and so if that character had exactly the same life as you, then you can just write yourself. Or if that character had exactly the same life as, whoever it is that you modeled that character off of, then they can be exactly the same. But if that character, now you understand, comes from a different place, or has a different belief, or had a different set of experiences in their early life before this story, then that character is not is their own person now, right? You whatever happened to that character beforehand is going to inform who that character is in the long run. And so these are all things that you probably have started realizing about your character as you were trying to write about their actions and what they're doing and how they're interacting with the setting and all of that, you realize that you had to start filling in some of those experiences. Or if you haven't started filling those in, you probably are realizing that you have to start filling them in now. What is it that made this character believe this thing, or made this character act this certain way towards this other person, or whatever. All of those character traits have come from somewhere. It's not just, well, because I wanted them to, right? If it's just because you wanted them to, you don't have a believable character. So some experience has made this character, or some set of experiences has made this character who they are, has given them this personality. They now have, no matter how old they are, whether they're 12 or 30 or 90, they have a lifetime of history and experiences building up to this point in the story. And you kind of have to know what that lifetime history and experience, and what those experiences were, at least the big ones, right? What is it that is making them who they are? And that also means that this character now has this set of deeply held beliefs and biases. And again, those may be similar to things that you believe, or biases that you have, or things that, if you modeled the character off somebody else, that person believes in the biases that they have. But those beliefs and biases come from the character's history and the character's experiences, not from yours. And so, with all of this in mind, what will help you write a believable character is if you accept that this character is now alive. And again, I don't actually physically believe that you've created a character, that's going to pop out of the book and be a person now. Obviously, that's not physically possible. But you have to think of them as if they could. That this person is alive. You could interact with them, and they would have certain interactions with you. Rather than, well, this is just my own creation and I can do with them as I please. Again, there are certain things that this character will and will not do, which means that going forward, as you write your story, you may have ideas about what you want to happen in this story. This is a story about this thing, and this character is going to have this experience, or this thing's going to happen to this character, and in the end, this is what's going to end up happening. I understand that point of view, but you also can't force the character to do, now that you have this character, you can't force them to do things that they wouldn't otherwise do, right? So, number one, when you're writing the character, if based on who this character has become, it seems as though, nope, they wouldn't do that, then from now on, you're kind of stuck. Like, you can either force them to do it and the story won't make sense, the character won't be true to who they are, or you can say, well, I guess the character can't do that anymore. Or if the character is going to do that, I have to figure out a believable way or reason for them to have done that. You also have to let the character act and speak naturally for themselves, which means that you have to listen to them. If you realize that I'm trying to get this character, I'm trying to write this part, I need this character to do or say this thing, but it just isn't working, then that means you're trying to force the character to do or say something that they wouldn't do. You have to let them do the things or say the things that they would do, which means sometimes that your story is going to change. Oh, I created this character and I really thought that I wanted the character to do this thing, but he won't, or she won't, or it just isn't believable when I make them do it. It's because it just doesn't fit with the character, right? So you have to listen to the character. What would the character do in this situation? That might change your story around. It may ultimately come to the same point, but the way that it gets there may now be different. And so you have to listen to them. Third and lastly, you have to make sure that the character is going to change and grow and learn from what they need and what they want. So now that you have this person who will do certain things and won't do certain things, you also have a person who needs certain things and wants certain things. And so as they go through the story, you want to, like, the most interesting thing for people when they read stories is to see how the character grows and changes, to experience what the character is learning. And the only way that you can do that is if you make the character believable, right? So if the character does the things that only they could do, says them in only the way that they could say them, does them in only the way that they could do them, but that also that they learn something from that experience, that they're not the same person at the end as they were at the beginning, because that is what's really going to sell your story. So if we think about the examples, we had the red fox fur coat on Monday, and we had a character who was kind of sexy and sly and kind of willing to manipulate other people. We have a character who is self-confident. She thrives on the domination of others, and she's a predator, right? That's the character who's been created. Well, we we have to allow her to be that character. We're not the people writing it, but the author had to allow her to be that character at the end, so that by the end, when she fully grows into this persona as the fox, the predator in the woods who needs to be free, she's gone on this journey from being, kind of oppressed and put down to discovering who she is at her core, and then becoming this predator who goes out into the woods and really kind of knows who she is and just kind of frees herself, right? That's her journey. And only that character would have done those things in that way. With George and Lenny, when we were first introduced to them in the example from Wednesday, we know from that example that George is going to act carefully and deliberately, and everything that George does is a careful and deliberate decision, even the one to kill Lenny, right? Only George could have made that decision in that way. It's a change for George because we don't expect George to kill Lenny. But when he does kill Lenny, we know that he has carefully and deliberately made that decision, and that it's a decision that's going to affect him for the rest of his life. And it's consistent with the example that we were given on Wednesday of this careful and deliberate person. We know that Lenny, on the other hand, from the example that we saw on Wednesday, is a brash and impulsive person, that he was a bit slow, not nearly as careful and deliberate, right? And that fits with Lenny. It doesn't mean that Lenny doesn't change, but only Lenny is going to act in that specific way that's going to get him to behave in the way that he does in that situation. And so it's really important that we are true to who these characters are. They're still true and compelling characters, but they have to be able to act only in the way that they would act. So let's look at one more example. This is an example from a book that I would like to read. It is on our reading list for this year, and we'll see how we can get around to it. It's called it's called Lord of the Flies. And this is a description from from the beginning of the book of a character named Ralph, who is one of the main characters. The background that you need is that these are characters. They're all children, boys. They're no girls, no adults, and they're stuck on this deserted tropical island. And this is from just the beginning of the book when they have been stuck there. So it says, Ralph jumped down from the terrace. The sand was thick over his black shoes and the heat hit him. He became conscious of the weight of his clothes, kicked his shoes off fiercely and ripped off each stocking with its elastic garter in a single movement. Then he leapt back on the terrace, pulled off his shirt, and stood there among the skull-like coconuts with green shadows from the palms and the forest sliding over his skin. He undid the snake clasp of his belt, lugged off his shorts and pants, and stood there naked, looking at the dazzling beach and the water. So we get plenty of action here. It's all of Ralph kind of jumping and leaping and kind of taking off his clothes and getting naked and kind of just enjoying the experience of being alone on this island as far as he knows for right now. This that he really seems kind of carefree and uninhibited. He's happy and playful, he's very childlike, he's excited. That, imagine how it would feel to be alone on a tropical island, thinking that you're alone on this beautiful place, and you can, see the palms of the forest sliding over his skin. You can kind of feel that breeze. It's all very um, it's all very pleasant and, playful, and it it's kind of nice in a way. Now, you can tell from the picture that I've provided you that that's not necessarily the whole story here. Lord of the Flies is well known as, the story about kids killing kids, and so um, that's not where this story is going to stay, right? But we have this expectation of Ralph, and so what this does is it leaves room for Ralph to grow and to change throughout the story. If, we start off with this child who is happy to be this uninhibited, playful, excited child, we start off there, then where's he going to go? And only Ralph is going to be able to go on that journey, and we have to believe that Ralph is going to go from being playful and childlike to whoever he becomes at the end of the story. But that growth has to be true to the character that has been created for us. And so Ralph now is kind of this alive character that we're going to experience this, the story through. And I think that's a really important idea to remember as you think about the character that you are going to write in your story. So this weekend, I want you to reflect on who your character has become as you wrote about them, because you may start to realize that, where you started with one idea, maybe with one model, through describing them throughout the week, they've kind of become a person of their own. And I want you to also think about now, how might they grow and change throughout the story? What is going to be their kind of personal journey throughout the story? Next week, we're going to talk a little bit more about this as we talk about dialogue, so that our characters can talk in a believable way. And that should pretty much get us set up then to write our story. I look forward to seeing what we come up with.